And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. On a Friday morning here, we are recording hours after the Colts schedule has officially dropped. We have a lot to get into here. We got the win total for the Colts, little record prediction. We have lack of primetime respect possibly from the league and the Colts getting 0 primetime games. We'll discuss the favorite game on our schedule as well. But George, I got to ask, to start the podcast here, will the Blue Horseshoe podcast be going international this fall?
I doubt it.
No, live from Frankfurt? Pats, Colts, Frankfurt, week 10?
We can start GoFundMe maybe. And then
we won't be planting the flag as the official Frankfurt Colts podcast? I
don't think so. We'll see how that turns out, but I don't think so. Cincinnati, we'll be at Cincinnati. We can do that one.
The Blue Horseshoe podcast sponsored by Skyline Chili.
Yeah, see,
we'll get our first sponsorship.
Right. That's okay. That's my nit to pick with the schedule. The two trips I know I can make, Tennessee and Cincinnati, are back to back in December. So poor me.
Poor George.
But I would like to see those spread out just a little bit because it's nicer to, hey, I'm going to go October to one of them, then the other one in December. At least it's nice. But get them back to back, and it's like, oh man, both trips back to back weeks. Not like I'm going to be able to see the progression on the road, but we'll make it work.
Make it work. So apologies to Frankfurt. We thought we were going to be, be your official. We still can be your official podcast. So please, if you're listening to us right now in Germany, adopt us as your official pod. But that's going to be a lot of fun seeing the Colts go to Germany to take on the Patriots.
I have German heritage, too. I need to go to my homeland.
Oh, really? Right? You speak any German?
I do not.
I was going to say, I don't know. I couldn't say one word. So I was going to say maybe that week of the game, we could speak, do the pod in German. But, you could be talking. Even if you knew German, I would just be sitting there listening like I have no idea what this guy's saying. But
that's like 3 generations back. So, but, still.
The Bremer roots run deep.
And no chance. So
that game is important, George, too, because not only obviously is it in Frankfurt, which is going to be the second ever game in Frankfurt, very cool, but it's also the only game the Colts will be in a standalone window right now all season long. They are playing at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on that Sunday morning, and otherwise, outside of one game at 4:05 against the Panthers, it is all 1 o'clock slates. The Colts got 0 primetime games. Let me ask you this, George. Do you have a problem with that? Do you think the Colts got screwed in a way where they should have gotten a Thursday night game, maybe a Monday night game? Should they have gotten, you think, just with where this team is, how we think they'll do this year, the schedule itself, right? Obviously, who they're playing dictates. Is it a sexy, fun matchup? Do you think there should have been one primetime game? Are you surprised that, for the most part, again, outside of London and outside of Germany, excuse me, I'm so programmed to saying international games in London. Outside of Germany, outside of the Panthers game at 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern, everything else is 1 o'clock.
Well, first of all, it'll be the third game in Frankfurt because the Chiefs and Dolphins are going to play the week before. So Frankfurt gets the doubleheader this year, which is, good for them. And it shows how popular the game was last year over there, that they're in year 2, they're already going to 2. As far as the primetime games go, I think it's one of the things that I get probably the most interaction from every year when the schedule comes out. Fans want to know why this game wasn't on primetime, why this game was this year, probably more so than any year, because obviously you used to be guaranteed one. So having 0 primetime games really did not sit well with the fan base. But I think at the end, I feel like it's one of the more overblown things that we regularly criticize in the NFL simply because of flex scheduling. Like, there's going to be a team right now that has 4 or 5 that won't play all of those. And there'll be a team that has none, either the Colts or the Texans, that will pop in on one. If you play well enough, especially if Richardson plays well enough, and the Colts put themselves, high on the national radar, they'll find a game to get in there. And I feel like it's a combination of a lot of things that led to this. Obviously, 4-12-1 last year plays into it. There's no question about that. I think the team's performance in primetime games last year didn't help their cause. You go back and watch that Broncos game, the Steelers game, the Chargers game. I doubt there were a lot of networks clamoring, get that team on our channel, bring them back here, you know. But I think the other part of it is the schedule. I mean, there's not last year, 2 of their 3 primetime games were like brand name teams, the Steelers and the Cowboys. All right, 4 they had, so half their primetime games were like brand name battles. This year, the Steelers are back on the schedule, but again, I don't think you watched that game last year and said, run that one back as far as a prime time. Who else even really stands out? Cleveland, maybe they've got a history there, but I don't know if they're really a national kind of team. They seem to be in that second tier more. I don't know who else on the schedule really stands out as that team alone can carry it and get you on to prime time. So I think those 3 factors kind of combine together. Last year's overall performance, last year's primetime performance, and then a weak schedule leads to no appearances for the Colts in primetime.
I think they should have gotten definitely a Thursday game. I would agree about Monday night and Sunday night fine. That's for the most part, better teams, sexier quarterback matchups, and obviously the Colts are not going to have that. I don't think the Colts will be very good in 2023. So I don't think we'll be seeing them getting flexed in. I don't think they deserve, like I said, especially after last year's performance, although I would argue some of them were very memorable on Sunday and
Dallas
Monday night.
was very memorable.
So yes. And I know it was not a primetime game, but it was a standalone game against the Vikings. So you could see history. You could see something you never seen before, either awful offense like the Broncos game and a historic comeback against the Vikings. So you could argue there is some intrigue there for the Colts. Well, I definitely think Thursday night, I think, should have been on the docket for the Colts, is especially Thursday night. I feel like that game more than anything is all about intrigue. I don't think the records matter as much as who am I watching. And if you're the Colts right now, you obviously have Anthony Richardson, who is one of, I think, the most intriguing players going to 2023, just because no one really has any idea what to expect. He could be terrible. He could be great. He could be somewhere in the middle. But the guy is all the physical, like on a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to like physical attributes, he's a 10 on everything. Right? Arm strength, size, speed. He is, as many call him, an alien. I would think, personally, and I don't think I'm being biased here, that nationally, the audience would be intrigued by an alien prospect at quarterback to see what he is. Not early in the year, but November, December, when he has some games under his belt and he's developing, just to kind of see what he's got. And you look at the schedule, maybe because it's right before they go to Germany, that maybe this is not the reason why they're on Thursday night. But you look at that Panthers game, I kind of figured that would be the game if you want to put the Colts in primetime, especially on a Thursday night. That Thursday night game, you have the Frank Reich revenge story, obviously, as a storyline. You have the number 1 pick, Bryce Young, versus the number 4 pick in Anthony Richardson. I thought that would be a matchup that a lot of the national audience would be drawn into, intrigued by, even if you're talking about a team that at that point in early November maybe combines to have 5 wins, something like that, where the records are not great, but it's just more of young quarterbacks kind of taking over the scene. I really thought that would be a reason why the Colts would be interesting. Because I would argue, let me just ask you this. Last year's team compared to this year's team. I would argue there's more intrigue with this year's team just because of the unknown with Anthony Richardson and some youth and some guys that, you have questions about compared to last year, where obviously there's still some unknown about Matt Ryan, but we saw Matt Ryan for, at that point, 15 years or something like that. And you kind of know who he is. Like, I would think this year's team is more interesting, more intriguing than last year's team. Obviously, they were in primetime and standalone too much last year. But I thought they should have got at least a Thursday night game here to kind of display that intrigue, especially at quarterback.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a lot of intrigue with this team, much more than there was a year ago. But I think that probably works against them as much as it does for them, just because a lot of the networks want that guarantee. Look, Aaron Rodgers is on 15 times. I mean, that's where they go. It's the Jets and the Chiefs. You're going to see them pretty much every week. I think, again, there were so many factors working against them, and I think one of them is the new Amazon deal for Thursday night. I mean, that's why people aren't guaranteed a primetime game anymore. I don't think Amazon, after paying all those billions of dollars, wasn't real happy with the Thursday night slate they got last year. And so I think they changed sort of the thinking on how those games are going to appear. I think definitely the way Thursday night football existed for most of its run, that Colts-Panthers game was a prime candidate to end up there. And if not that, the Colts and the Texans, and for the same kind of reasons, just throw the two young quarterbacks out there and put them on a national stage. They did put the Panthers game at 4:05, which is interesting because it's even that's not the standalone window. Like the 4:20 game is the national game, so that's sort of the game that's running against the national game. And I think it's been a while since I've looked at the TV policies, but I think that usually ends up like Indy will get it and Charlotte will get it, and the rest of the country won't, which is
100%.
even more surprising because I do think if you were going to point to one game on this schedule to kind of feel like, yeah, regardless of everything else, record and anything else that's going on, that one holds the most intrigue. The head coach, the quarterback showdown, that alone, I think would have gotten more interest than anything else. I mean, we didn't get there yet, but that's my favorite game on the schedule. I'll say that straight up, just because you've got so much going on there. The number one overall pick versus the most athletic, highest ceiling quarterback in the draft. Frank Reich versus his old team. I can't really point at any other game on the schedule this year that has that kind of storyline. Right now, they may develop as the year goes on, but right now, as we sit here in May, I don't know if I can really point to another game with that kind of juice on the Colts schedule.
I would agree, and that's why I thought for sure, like, I would definitely have betted on one primetime game again, probably Thursday night. And I thought that, like you said, that would have been the matchup just because there are a lot of storylines outside of a team or two teams that probably won't have the best record. You still have a reason to watch because there are so many intriguing areas to talk about, not the besides just the records. And I think you're 100% right, by the way. Last year's Amazon Thursday night slate, I think, is absolutely reason why they're talking about flexing now games to Thursday night, because you got some doozies of a game last year, and I don't say doozy in a good way, that's for sure. And not to mention, now that's also why teams are not guaranteed Thursday nights, because I'm sure Al Michaels is calling up saying, I'm not calling another Broncos-Colts 12-9 game, or I'm not calling another week after Bears-Commanders game that, if you thought that Colts-Broncos game was tough on offense, that Bears-Commanders game may have topped it with just how feeble both offenses were. So I think Al Michaels is pulling some strings there. Let him know I am not here for another crap Thursday night schedule. That is for sure. But when you look at where the Colts, George, compare to the rest of the league, they're one of four teams that do not have a primetime game. So they're in the same category as the Texans, the Falcons, and the Cardinals. Now, again, I don't think I'm biased here. You let me know if it's kind of bleeding in. Like, I think, to me, the Colts are way more intriguing than any of the other three teams that they're in that category with of zero primetime games. The Texans have CJ Stroud and a new head coach similar to the Colts. But the Texans, unlike the Colts, have no talent anywhere else. That team stinks. So I think that team is, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but there's nothing outside of Stroud that really jumps out and says, wow, I can't wait to watch this team. Falcons are just kind of blah. They have Desmond Ridder. You have Bijan Robinson. Okay, maybe that's a reason to watch, but it's kind of an okay team. And the Cardinals right now are a total mess. No Kyler Murray half the year. When he comes back, who the hell knows, coming off an ACL? Like, again, you tell me the four teams that right now have zero primetime games: Colts, Cardinals, Falcons, Texans. Do the Colts belong in that class?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, unfortunately, I think they're down in the bottom of the league. I think they're in the lower quartile of the lower quartile right now. But yeah, that's what the league's right. The fun part about the league is that it doesn't matter what your expectations are. You go out there and you make your own story as soon as September rolls around, and the teams that start off down there, when they get hot, it ends up being one of the more fun stories of the year. Look at Detroit last year. Start off 1-5 or whatever they were, and now they're in the Thursday night opener against the Chiefs because people are that excited about what Detroit could be this season. Favored by a lot of people to win the NFC North. I think of that group of those four teams, to me, the most intriguing one is the Red Stallions down there in Atlanta, because that group, the offense could be really fun if Ritter can figure it out. Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. Drake London, that's an interesting group of offensive players. You could argue the same for the Colts if Richardson figures it. I think those two teams are I think neck and neck. as far as the best chance to be watchable from those four teams. Who knows how games are going to turn out? The NFL is so crazy. Outside of the writers, nobody knows how the games are going to turn out. So um, I think right now, I think the Colts are in the tier that they should be to start with. We'll see how things finish, but there's, like I said, all off season long, they lost the benefit of the doubt, and that goes for the networks too. You look at last year and the travesty that it became, and I think they've got to earn some of that trust back.
That point, I will not argue with. I think you're right about that. And if you don't get George's Red Stallions comment, do yourself a favor. After the pod is over, of course, please listen to us or watch us if you're on YouTube here. Blue Horseshoe Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Pod on YouTube. Check out the Tennessee Titans schedule release video. It is, I think, George, the best video I've ever seen. They're on Broadway Street in Nashville asking random people to identify the logos. And I'm not going to give anything away, but just do yourself a favor. It's the only time I'll ever advocate anything Titans on this show. I hate that organization. Everything they do, it just drives me crazy. But the schedule release video, they knocked out of the park. And so if you're on Twitter and you see the Falcons have changed their name to the Red Stallions, if you look at the Colts did it this morning. He says we're recording this. Their new Twitter handle is not, or their Twitter name, not the Cowboys. So it is, the Titans did hit an absolute home run when it comes to their schedule release video. And I think it's the best way to spend 2.5 minutes on social media. I think it's hard to top that.
Oh, they won this year. I mean, you got to give the teams around the league a lot of credit because I think they've really upped their game the last few years. Social media schedule release is almost the Super Bowl for the social media teams anymore. Yeah. And they all kind of try to go out and Tennessee took top prize this year. I mean, that was outstanding. I thought there were some other good ones, but that's quality entertainment. People definitely need to go and check that out. The Red Stallions, Atlanta jumping on that right away on Twitter makes it even better. They see that, they do it. I hadn't seen the Colts did it yet, so kudos. Colts have a good social media team as well. So, nice to have some for this time of year to have fun, right? Like that's what it's all about.
What do you think of the Colts video? Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner eating the schedule.
Now, first of all, I'm on anything that features Grover Stewart right away is going to get thumbs up from me. So
this is the Grover Stewart Stan podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So right away it's 4-star just because it's got Grover Stewart, and then it's centered on food. So it's speaking to me from the very beginning. But I thought it went a little long. I thought it was a little bit long, but the ending is worth it. If you stick around to the end, it's got kind of a surprise twist at the end, cameo, if you will, that I think they stuck the landing.
Let me ask you this. 17 courses the Colts did. Could you do that? Could you yourself, George, if you were asked by the Colts, could you eat the schedule?
Maybe when I was in my 20s, I might have been. Now, if I did, I'd be paying for it. I can tell you that.
What week are you going to?
I'm lightweight these days, like 6 maybe. Week 6, week 7.
So
my 10-year-old
probably
get deeper than me on this one. Get her on the right day. She might get through all 17.
Fitting that week 6 is the Jacksonville game in Jacksonville, where the Colts House of Horrors is. Figure that's kind of where you wave the white flag and say, you know what, I can't go anymore.
That's it. I'm done at that point. Yeah, that's the loss that's already on the schedule.
Would you have tried Gator Bites?
I had the chance many times when we lived in Florida and didn't do it. But my wife did, and she loved it. She swears by it. Grover seemed to be enjoying it. So maybe I'm should.
Intrigued. I don't know. I never had the chance, unlike you, to try Gator. I'm very picky with my food. I'm definitely someone who's not going out on a limb to try things. I will definitely admit that's a flaw of mine, but I'd be interested in Gator. I think I would try it. People, it sounds like it tastes like chicken. I mean, Grover Stewart thought it was chicken at first, so.
But then he changed it. Let's see, that's what I liked about Grover there. Like he tried to rewrite history there and say he knew it was Gator all along, but Buckner wasn't having that.
That's why you got to have DeForest Buckner to keep everybody in check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's tough. That is to eat 17 courses. I know they're big fellas and eat a lot, but boy, oh boy, I wonder if it was over a few days, because I would definitely need a break for sure.
Yeah, they split it up. Some of that. I mean, like beignets. You got to be here for that.
Yeah, the Primetime sandwich was massive. The hangover burger for Vegas was,
Oh, jeez.
that does not even look real. I'm sure it is real
No,
because it's Vegas, but my God, that is
that
a
was a
heart attack
mess.
special.
Oh, absolutely. I was a little bit surprised the team let them eat that. Like at some point, Rusty Jones and just come running out of the screen like, no, guys, no, no, no,
No.
no, no. Leave that one alone.
Or you cut to after the video, they're just running laps. They're up and down the
Yeah,
field to run it off.
out
Oh
there
boy.
trying to. Hey, Grover's working on his speed too, so that's what he told us when we had him this spring. That he's gonna stay on the field all 3 downs this year. He's gonna go out and be a pass rusher.
Well, eating the schedule maybe won't help with that too much. So if you haven't checked it out, Colts social media, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, eating the schedule. And if you're still into these schedule release videos, check out the Titans. Do yourself a favor. By far the best one I've ever seen. The social media is loving it. That is for sure. So it's definitely a good 2 minutes and 30 seconds of your time well spent for sure. I want
I
to play.
sent it to one of my friends who is not a football fan, and he loved it. I mean, this is crossing all demographics.
I would agree with that. You're right. It is breaking down borders left and right. It's uniting everyone in America because everyone can rally around a very good video. So congrats to the Titans. They're making world peace, if you will.
Nobel Peace Prize.
Titans social media team. I want to play a quick game with you here, George, really fast here. Intrigue or no intrigue? Like, are these teams in your mind more intriguing this year than the Colts? The Washington Commanders or the Colts? Who is more intriguing this year specifically?
If we take the ownership situation out, I'll say the Colts. And really, the only intriguing thing about the Commanders right now is who's going to buy them.
I would agree. Commanders, 1 primetime game, Colts, 0. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers led by Baker Mayfield? Would you say they're more intriguing or the Colts?
Or Kyle Trask. That could be a
Or
Gator
Kyle
Bowl.
Trask? Oh,
You have Gator Bowl when the Bucks come to visit here. I'm going to go Colts again. Richardson, I think, gets the nod here. The Bucks seem like they're in free fall from that Super Bowl run, so not a lot of intrigue in that.
I would agree. Buccaneers, 2 primetime games, Colts, 0. How about the
Are they
Panthers?
hedging their bet? Do they think Tom Brady's coming back again? Is that why the Bucks are on primetime twice?
Maybe. It's a fair. Let me ask you this. Tom Brady's going to be honored by the Patriots week number 1. Does that mean he's done? Like, if you're getting honored by the Patriots, does that officially lock in any thoughts? And there's a report this morning as we're recording this Friday morning that he's interested in buying the Raiders or joining their ownership group. Now, it was reported that he tried to join the ownership group in Miami and he was going to be a player/owner. So maybe he's thinking the same thing there in Vegas. But can you, if you're the Patriots, can you bring back Tom Brady and honor him the first home game and then still think there's a chance he could come back and play again for another team?
I mean, as a White Sox fan, I saw it because they put Harold Baines' number up, and then he came back many times after that. But if there's one organization in sports you do not want to follow, it's the White Sox. So, no, you should not do that.
No? Okay. So no Tony La Russa hirings 2.0, you're saying?
It's exactly. See, like, no, that's not. Basically, I think for any pro sports franchise, just look at what the White Sox are doing and don't do that. That's a pretty good guide.
I like that. So maybe, you know what? Maybe there's some intrigue there of, hey, is Tom Brady coming back every single week? If Baker Mayfield stinks, if Kyle Trask stinks, maybe that's a reason to put him on national TV. So then after they throw 3 picks, you could talk about, oh, Tom Brady, this team needs you. This team's, do all the network TV shows a favor by kind of making the Bucks, forcing them to be a storyline. But Tom Brady's out there. Again, 2 primetime games for them, 0 for the Colts. Panthers, 2 primetime games. Are they more intriguing than the Colts?
Just because of Bryce Young. I mean, anytime you're the number 1 overall pick and he's a quarterback, I think that's going to put you high up the list. And they've got a new coach too. So, new era there in Carolina. I think it's close to a tie, but because Bryce is the number 1 pick, I would give the Panthers the nod.
I would agree. And especially in a division where I think they are closer to competing right now for like legitimate playoff spots compared to the Colts. I would agree. I think the Panthers are more intriguing by 2 primetime games. Like the Panthers have 2, the Colts have 0. I don't know about that. I think I would even it up, but I think all things considered, yes, I definitely think the Panthers, I'm with you there, are more intriguing nationally than the Colts. A few more here really fast. How about the Rams? Do you have any, like, yeah, they have
Oh,
2 primetime games. Do you have any feel on the Rams? And is there, for you, do you have any like interest in watching them now twice in primetime?
no, they're very similar to the Bucks, in that you had a Super Bowl championship team and just a shell of that right now. They even had a fire sale of sorts this offseason. So yeah, no, I don't see a lot of intrigue. But they are in what, second, third biggest media market in the country.
But it's like if a tree falls in the forest. I hate making these fan jokes, but for the Rams, it's kind of like, yeah, you're in the second biggest media market in LA. But if there aren't a lot of Rams fans, tree falls in the forest, no one's around, does anyone hear it? Is that, Rams are in prime time, but if no one's watching, what does that, what does that really do for you?
They're saying the Rams actually do not exist. Is that what you're trying to get at here?
So it was on now I'm like, who does not exist? Is it the Jaguars in that
Jaguars.
Titans video? Okay. So the Titans and the Jaguars and the Rams could be one and the same.
Could be.
Could be one and the same.
I think the fans on Broadway would tell you, sure, they are one and the same.
That might be the logo. Really, really a skew tangent here. That might be the logo where that might be the least identifiable. Like if you put all 32 teams, I know we already had that team doesn't exist in the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Rams would be the team that most people say, I have no idea. Fake.
It's LA and that's it.
Right.
It looks as much like a Chargers logo as it does a Rams logo, to be honest.
Kind of cheap, like almost like a clip art, kind of like, we just rushed together. Let's throw this thing together. It could be like an XFL team for all we know.
Yep.
But they do have 2 primetime games. The Colts do not. I want to throw one more by here. The Saints, with Derek Carr now as quarterback, have 3 primetime games. You intrigued at all by the Saints?
Not really. That's a lot of love for Derek Carr, though.
3 prime and Dennis Allen.
The defense is good, or was good. But yeah, last year, I feel like they should have won that division last year. As bad as the NFC South was, and they didn't. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of intrigue there. I guess the Derek Carr situation, though, I mean, people always are excited about quarterbacks in new places. That one, I would put the Saints high on my list of people who may not play all their scheduled primetime games.
I would agree. Like, and again, Derek Carr's, he's been around for a while. You kind of know who he is. The division stinks. The Saints are a team, like I said, they're okay. Like, can Michael Thomas stay healthy? Hasn't shown in the last few years. It's like, that's the only thing that bothers me when you look at the Colts getting no primetime games. I'm not telling you they're going to be a good team, and we'll get to the win-loss here in a second record prediction. Like, I don't think the Colts are going to be anywhere near 500, let alone a playoff contender. But I do think just having Anthony Richardson and having him be such a big question mark brings just general intrigue that I think would draw in a national audience more than, the Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield, more than the Saints with Derek Carr. Even, George, you look at 5 primetime games. The Las Vegas Raiders with Josh McDaniels and Jimmy G have 5 primetime games, and they're one of the 3 games on Christmas Day in the triple header. So if you talk about a standalone window, they have 6 standalone games this year. Now, they are a prime candidate, like you mentioned, to be flexed out a few of those. But it's like, where's the draw for Vegas this year where you want to see them almost a third of the time somewhere on national TV?
Yeah, well, that's just the team itself. I mean, that's Raiders fans being everywhere and people saying, they'll watch no matter what. But yeah, that's an insane number. But again, like I said, I think you can do that every year. You can go down the schedule and say, what are the Raiders doing with 5? Why do the Saints have 3? But it's a lot of times a self-correcting thing, so it just doesn't get me as fired up as a lot of the other stuff. Because eventually, they'll be flex scheduling and they'll move some things in. But I'll tell you, by the time we get to Christmas, I'll probably be sitting there going, I've seen the Raiders enough this year. We not need the Raiders here on Christmas Day.
Well, we'll be thinking, honestly, like we did last year with the Colts. Oh, even Colts again on national TV, a Monday night game followed by a Sunday night game, another, primetime game, a standalone game. Please, enough. So
they do have 2 potential Saturday games. So they've got 2 right away that could pop in there with the Texans and the Steelers, I think. So that Steelers may end up being a standalone game just yet.
That's true. That Monday night last year, maybe it's a Saturday, early Christmas gift on maybe a December 15th, possibly, or I guess at that point it'd be the 14th. That is for sure. That is for sure. All right, let me ask you this, George. In order for the Colts to be intriguing this year, record aside, that obviously means that Anthony Richardson's going to be playing a lot. And we have seen teams recently not rush their young quarterback on the field, right? We know Patrick Mahomes, he played or sat up every game but won his rookie year. Even recently, last year, the Steelers started Mitch Trubisky, I think off the top of my head, it was the first 3, maybe first 4 games before they made the switch to Kenny Pickett. You look at Anthony Richardson, sometimes there's a thought, and this was, I think, the Steelers thought last year of rough start to the schedule. Let's put the veteran out there first, kind of weather the storm. And when the schedule eases up, that's when we'll put our rookie quarterback there. So you look at the Colts right now with Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson. Look at the start of the schedule. First 4 games. Home against the Jaguars, week 1. At the Texans, week 2. At the Ravens, week 3. Home against the Rams, week 4. That first month, is it a gauntlet enough in your mind where you should say, or you should think, you know what, maybe it's better they put Gardner Minshew out there to start the season, and maybe week 5 against the Titans, week 6 against the Jaguars, or week 7 maybe at home against the Browns, that's when you can ease Anthony Richardson in and kind of have him play the rest of the season? Or do you think it's manageable enough? Week 1, Richardson, let him play, figure it out, and he won't get overwhelmed by playing some of these great defenses right away and kind of put him in a tough position to start. But do you think this early schedule start here is enough for the quarterback, for the Colts to say, you know what, he could start right away, let's do it?
I know week 6 should definitely not be the first start. You don't want to do that to him. The Jacksonville game is not the place to put the rookie out there and say, the one down there in Jacksonville, that's too much baggage for your first career start for sure. I'm very much right now of the opinion that if he has the protections down and he knows what he's doing, in that regard, then throw him out there. Because as we talked about before, you're not coming into this year expecting a playoff berth. You're not expecting to contend for the division title. And the schedule did you little favors in that again this year with 4 division games in the first 6 weeks. It'll be very similar to last year where the Colts AFC South fate will be determined before Halloween because you've got those 4 division games right out of the blocks. But in my mind, experience is what he lacks. We talked about that on the last pod. The number one thing that you're looking for with him is experience. And the only way he's going to get that is to play. So I don't think I really would have looked at the schedule much either way, and been too concerned about it. It's more about him. If he can protect himself and you feel like he's mentally strong enough to handle the adversity that comes with, playing early as a rookie, which I think they already have a pretty good feeling about that. The protection part, we'll see. Those are the 2 elements to me that should drive this. Because again, a lot of those other things, the Steelers last year were thinking, Trubisky's a veteran guy. Maybe he can keep us in the playoff race. Won't play Pickett until you feel like you need to. And then things kind of went off the rails for them early in the year, and Pickett actually rallied them and got them back into the picture. But I think when teams sit people, that's one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough. Like I hear that argument all the time because if anyone's talking about the Colts, that's what they're talking about, right? Is when will Richardson start? It's like Patrick Mahomes was going to a team that was 3 or 4 straight years in the playoffs. You had a veteran, not an all-pro, but a veteran in Alex Smith who had led that team to the playoffs. It made sense not starting right away. The Packers had Brett Favre and were a perennial playoff team, and you're not going to throw a rookie in there right there. I think one of the things we talked about this, after the draft. I was going into the draft, I was thinking, somebody like Detroit or Seattle would have been a good landing spot for Richardson because he could sit behind. It would be a situation like that for him. He could sit behind an established starter and then come into a good team, be ready to go right away. But there's also a different level of stress that comes with that because you're expected to carry on that recent success. Those are teams that think they're going to make the jump to being Super Bowl contenders. They're playoff contenders now. Your next step up is championship contenders. And that puts a lot of pressure on a young guy, both from a standpoint of once he gets in there, but also from a standpoint of fans saying, hey, got a chance to make a run here. Why are you drafting a quarterback that's not going to play? I think the Colts are a good spot for Richardson for a lot of reasons. One, he can play right away without those expectations. There's not that belief that this team should be contending for a title this year. I think that lets him go out there and make his mistakes and learn on the job, which is probably the most important thing for him to do.
I definitely have been conservative when it comes to, taking the time with quarterbacks and letting them develop and not being shy about sitting them. But the one thing I can't argue with, and for this specific situation, why I do think he should start week one, and the schedule is now like the 85 Bears, followed by Bill Belichick, followed by the 49ers, where it's not like a gauntlet that says, you know what, maybe sitting him is better. I think playing right away is going to be the best thing, because I think you said it before and you're 100% right. The only way you get experience is by playing. And Anthony Richardson lacks experience. Right? One starting year, 13 starts at Florida. The guy needs to play. And so sitting on the bench is not going to, do him many favors. And you're right. The expectations are low, where kind of messing around, figuring out what works, what doesn't work in a year that we both believe, at least, wins and losses don't matter. Like, the record is irrelevant. That is the perfect time for him to cut his teeth, figure it out. You're right. It's not a Trey Lance situation where he's coming in and the expectation is, well, you're going to take us over the top. We got a good team now. You're going to, blow us out of the water. It's just, hey, look, this team right now is in peril. They need a quarterback. They need some life at quarterback, and kind of go through, this year, especially figure out what works, what doesn't work. And the only goal of 2023 being, let's have some hope and belief that 2024 and beyond, this is a guy that we can absolutely see being the franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. So I'm with you. Like, I think that the way you get to that conclusion is by playing. And when you start with the Jaguars, you have the Texans week 2. Sure, the Ravens are going to be a very tough team, very veteran, experienced team, especially on defense. Rams, even with the sale of or the trade of Jalen Ramsey, still have Aaron Donald, still have some pieces on that defense that could pose a challenge. That also could be a good thing. Because again, if Richardson struggles early on, the world's not ending. It should be expected by most fans that he's not going to come in and light the world on fire like Patrick Mahomes did his first year as a starter. So let him figure it out, let him make mistakes. And in a year where there's no pressure, no expectations, use that to your advantage and, kind of like I said, mess around and figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and we talked about this many weeks ago, whether they needed the quarterback in place right away with Steichen in year one in building that offense. And now that you've got the rookie, I almost feel like Minshew being on the field is wasted time. You're not building an offense for Gardner Minshew, and you're not trying to get Alec Pierce to grow with and Josh Downs to grow with Gardner Minshew. Now, again, to me, the two caveats: if you sense that he's frustrated and that there might be damage done if you put him out there, to his confidence or just to his overall mentality, then you don't want to play him. And if you sense that he's not got the protections down, if he's not able to make those calls, make sure that he's not under complete jailbreak pass rush every snap. Those are the only two things that would keep me from starting him. Otherwise, get out there and learn on the job and, see how things turn out. I think that's where all the intrigue in this season is for the Colts. And it's a young offense in general. I mean, you got Pittman's getting up there to be more of a veteran and Jonathan Taylor, but they were drafted in 2020 and they're like the old heads now. The line has, Kelly and Nelson and Smith, but even there you've got who knows at right guard right now, but Will Fries will be year 3 and year 2 of actually like playing. And then Raymond's in his second year at left tackle. So, it's a very young offense. Skill guys we just mentioned, Pierce and Downs, who you want to grow with the rookie. I think it just all comes together. It's a new system. It's a new scheme under Shane Steichen. Let the rookie get in there and build it around him and let him grow with the guys that you're hoping he's going to play with, for the bulk of his career here.
You're right too. Like, it's a young offense. Like, let them all grow and learn together. Like, build it through. And also too, like I said, assuming he knows the basic concepts. Obviously, if he doesn't, don't put him on the field no matter who the opponent is. But you also got to think, too, if you're Shane Steichen, you're going to start it simple and small and then open up the playbook and add more to it as Anthony Richardson gets comfortable. Shane Steichen, early on, seems like someone who, again, is going to work to put the quarterback in the best position to succeed. I think a lot of the ways you see that early on is by putting less on the quarterback's plate, keeping it simple, and having them feel comfortable. And then as they start to, feel good, you add things as the year goes on. And so by playing early on, you kind of, again, help accelerate that learning curve. And then week 1, let's say it's very vanilla, very basic. Well, week 10, by that point, assuming Richardson progresses in a linear way, which we hope at least he does, you would think the playbook will be more expansive, more complicated, there'll be more variations in week 10 compared to week 1 and week 18 compared to week 10. So you're just helping the learning curve build, and you only get that by playing, by getting reps, by getting game experience and learning the speed of the NFL firsthand. So I do think, the schedule's not hard in general. So it's not like there was like this pocket of games we looked at and said, oh boy, if they're a bunch together to start the season, they could, maybe not play Richardson. It's a very, really outside of Baltimore, and outside of Cincinnati, a very manageable schedule for the most part. A lot of teams are in the area of the Colts where they're developing, where they're okay, not a guaranteed playoff team, some more experienced than others, but for the most part, it is not murderer's row with the schedule, that's for sure. You said it before. Let's get into it here quickly before we kind of wrap up and do our record prediction and kind of hit on the over-under that Vegas thinks the Colts will go this year. Favorite game on the schedule of the 17, George? You said it before. Let's hear it again.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Panthers with all those storylines. When you look at Frank Reich and his game against his former team, and Bryce Young versus Anthony Richardson, and kind of getting a gauge for how these two rebuilds are going, at that point in the year, I think there's a lot there. If I had to pick a runner-up, I guess the Germany game, because it's in Germany.
That'd be pretty cool. That's good. That atmosphere is going to be electric. You saw last year with Bucks Seahawks, first game in Germany. I think that was in Munich, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's a different stadium this year. But either way, the atmosphere was incredible there. And that's part of the reason why the NFL is going back to Germany, not once, but twice, with the Dolphins and Chiefs the week beforehand, kind of getting everyone warmed up for the big Colts-Patriots matchup that I'm sure the German fans are just fiending for right now. That's going to be a lot of fun. Here's a game
how can you give them Chiefs Dolphins the week before too, and here's Colts Patriots? That seems a little bit rude.
That you are right. They set the bar very high for what good American football looks like, and the very next week it could be a little different. Let's just say offensive execution, Colts Patriots versus Dolphins Chiefs, especially if Tua is on the field and healthy. That is for sure. Enjoy the offense while you can the week before, to all those German fans out there. One game I'm very intrigued in, George, and not for anything on the field, but off the field. Week 17, the penultimate home game. Josh McDaniels comes to Lucas Oil Stadium for the first time as a head coach. I hate Josh McDaniels. He's an absolute clown. The Colts, I think, dodged a major bullet and not hiring him. I think he's an absolute failure as head coach, and he's showing he has not grown from Denver to Vegas. I mean, when Jeff Saturday's beating you, that's all you need to know. All you need to know about your capabilities as a head coach. But I am looking forward to, I'm sure, the warm reception Josh McDaniels will get from the Indy faithful as he makes his return for the first time as a head coach to Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, that's a sneaky good one. I hadn't really thought about that because I wasn't getting that far down the road. But the whole situation with McDaniels, he was back, I think, once with the Patriots as the offense coordinator. But that's a totally different situation. You're not the head man. You're not going to get asked about it 100 times during the week. You have the one availability, obviously, but you would imagine the Raiders media is going to be asking him about that all week long. Coming off the game last year where the Colts go in there and beat the Raiders in Vegas, this is a weird series because it feels like the Colts win in Vegas and the Raiders win here. So it's just an odd kind of recent history between them, but see how that one goes. I do think there's some real intrigue there. Now, by the time we get to week 17, maybe not, but I do think that's a sneaky good one.
And two, it's the second to last game. So again, assuming Richardson starts week 1 or early in the season, assuming he doesn't get hurt, I think it's also a nice way to kind of see, that's an opportunity to kind of look at how he plays then and look back at, week 1 and see how he progresses as well. It's kind of also a nice way to kind of, as a benchmark, to see, okay, how is he looking? How has he gotten better? What areas has he grown in week 17? I know it's not the last game of the season, but again, the second last game of the season. So it's just a nice way to kind of look and see how he's grown compared to week 1 and how he's looked at. So hopefully there is some progression. There's some, reason for optimism, and hopefully that's a game we're looking forward to. Because you're right, last year, end of the season, it was, oh God, we got to get ready for another game. Just get this over with. I definitely have a feeling that we will not be saying the same thing this year, unless it's Gardner Minshew's finishing out the string, or Sam Ellinger. And then I think, okay, let's wave the white flag and let's get out of here.
2 years ago, the Raiders were in week 17 and, playoffs on the line. So that happens again. It'll be a huge story.
That was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it was.
Beginning of the end for Carson Wentz, beginning of the end for Frank Reich. Hopefully
maybe for Derek Carr too. Looking back at it, he won the game in the fourth quarter, but wasn't much longer for him as a Raider after that.
That's true. They cannot wait to move on from him. That is for sure. All right. So we got the schedule, George. We already knew the opponents. It's not a gauntlet whatsoever. Vegas has the Colts over under win total 6.5. Taking the over on that, taking the under?
Taking the under. Didn't ask my daughter yet. I probably should check on that, see what she's going to do. My wife's taking the over.
Okay. I like the optimism.
She's buying it. She's optimistic. I think 4 or 5 wins this year is where I just think there's too much youth. We talked about it on offense, defense the same way. Entire secondary is going to be first and second year guys outside of Kenny Moore and Isaiah Rodgers. You lost a big time player at every level of the defense. And I think that's something that probably needs to get a little more attention than it has. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue is your sack leader. You lose him off the defensive line. Bobby Okereke was the second leading tackler. You lose him off the linebacker group. And then the veteran leader of that secondary, 2 of them really, and Stephon Gilmore and Rodney McLeod. That to me is going to be a lot to overcome with rookies. I am optimistic that they'll get better as the year goes on, and maybe the bulk of those 4 or 5 wins will come later in the year. And I think they'll be competitive and they'll be entertaining, but I think it's going to be a rough year record-wise.
I would say 5-12 is my record prediction. So I'm with you. I'm on the under as well, but like we've talked about multiple times, that's not a bad thing. Like, I don't think if we're sitting here, the Colts have 4 wins or 5 wins, that's a failure. That's a reason to be disappointed or the reason to be upset. The only thing that matters this year is Anthony Richardson's development, how the offense looks from week 1 to week 18. And you hope it improves. You hope it looks better. You hope that we're sitting here at this point next year talking about an offense that could take a step, could take a jump here to some consistency and start to be a player, in terms of, maybe not a threat next year, but start to be on that path to being a contender sooner rather than later. That's all that matters. And if you feel confident after the year of, okay, I like the direction this team is going and heading in, I don't think the wins and losses matter at all. Like, this is one of the few years where I think you throw the wins and loss record out the window and the Colts season will not be defined by what their record says. And I hope Colts fans listening understand that. Because at least last night, I know it's a small sample size, George, and one person is not speaking for the fan base, but I was doing a live stream on YouTube last night, Blue Horseshoe Pod. Make sure you subscribe to that. We'll be doing a lot of those as well, kind of getting your listener interactions as well on YouTube. Only way to do that is by subscribing to the Blue Horseshoe Pod on YouTube. And one comment I got yesterday when we were talking about the lack of primetime games was basically, don't worry about it. The regular season, lack of primetime, don't worry. The Colts will send a message nationally come playoff time. We should not be talking or using the Colts and playoffs in the same sentence in 2023 whatsoever. That should not be the expectation. That should not be the thought. There should, this team is not going to be anywhere near 500, and that's okay. But I think having playoff expectations, thinking this team is going to win 10 or 11 games, I think you're only setting yourself up for failure and setting yourself up for disappointment.
Look at the number one fan. I mean, Jim Irsay is always out there talking about multiple Lombardis and, setting the goals as high as you can. And at the owners' meeting, he said, they'll know if they're heading in the right direction. And that's what the barometer is, improvement, moving in the right direction. And so I think even he knows this is going to be a year that you measure differently. You judge it a little bit differently. And that's fine. Everybody goes through those times. And it doesn't mean that there won't be something spectacular, that there won't be a miracle. I think 2012 was my most fun year to cover on this beat. And then they were 1-3, I think, at the start. Definitely 1-2. And then Chuck Pagano's leukemia diagnosis came in, you had told me at that moment that that team was going to the playoffs. No chance. So that's what makes the NFL the greatest reality show going. You know, you don't have any idea, and every team has the opportunity to surprise you. But as we sit here in May, I don't have that kind of expectations for this group. And I don't think those are realistic expectations for this group. Like you said, it's about getting these young guys indoctrinated to the league, getting Shane Steichen's system put in, laying a foundation for what this team can be in 2024 and beyond.
Like, you look at the schedule, it's not, again, we've talked about it, it's not a hard schedule whatsoever. You have the Texans twice, which I know last year you didn't beat them once. So I get, you can't really say, oh, the Texans, that's 2 easy wins because the Colts went 0-1-1 against them last year. But the Texans still do not have a lot of talent. You look at the Saints, I'm not really high on them. Carolina's in a similar situation as you. The Patriots right now are not very good. Falcons, Raiders, like, again, it's not like the schedule, you're playing all these playoff teams and it's going to be impossible. You have a lot of teams that are in similar situations as you, and a lot of teams coming off losing years last year. But that doesn't mean you can give the Colts the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, they're going to beat all these teams. Because again, Anthony Richardson, let's remember why he dropped to number 4. And I say drop in air quotes because, again, he made that big free fall. But it's like there's a reason why, with all the physical attributes, he didn't go number 1. The consistency is not there. This is a guy that can make one great play and the very next play make a debilitating decision, throw, and it, just stalls a drive. He's nowhere near consistent. That's the reason why he didn't go number 1 and was really never in consideration to go number 1. There's going to be a lot of growing pains, a lot of ups and downs for Richardson to develop, hopefully, into the quarterback that we think he can be with all the physical tools says that he can be. It's going to be a process.
I think there's a lot of good signs right now off the field with him, which is good to see. He said all the right things. He seems to be committed to getting better. And that's one of the biggest keys of this. You look at Jalen Hurts and that jump that he made in Philly, and so much of that was just work ethic and commitment. And it does look like, at least early on, Richardson's going to make those kinds of commitments as well. So, that's what the season's all about. His growth, his progress, and that offense slowly coming around as a unit that might be formidable at some point in this league.
But it's going to take time, George. The Colts have said patience a ton already. It's intentional. Lower expectations, temper them, and just realize this is going to be, I think, a fun season. Almost like I would equate it to the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of like a lot of young, not this year because the Thunder made the play, and so that's not the point I'm trying to make. But even like last year, they have a lot of young talent, a lot of excited. Like, I think it's going to be an exciting, fun season. And I think that excitement and youth is going to equate to not a lot of wins, but it's still, you're going to have a reason to watch all 18 games. I think have a reason to look forward to all 18 games. That's really, George, that's the only hope I have. Give me a reason in week 18 to still look forward to watching this team. Whereas last year, again, we were counting down the days. We were doing off-season, basically podcasts in like week 15. So it's like at that point, it's just like, oh my God, let's just get to the end of the season and let's just start, we know that the teardown is coming. Let's just get to it already. I just want to have excitement of, okay, that I wake up in late December and, oh, the Colts are on today. I'm excited to watch. If I have that feeling, that's all. That to me is a success in 2023. Wins and losses don't really matter.
This is very similar to the season the Pacers just went through, where you have a very young team and the record wasn't great at the end of the year, but they were competitive. There's good feeling. There's people with hope moving forward. That's what you want out of the Colts season.
And they have, or in the lottery for a potential top pick, just like the Colts. Again, honestly, George, if we're talking about a 4-13 or 5-12 year, I would say it's a win in the sense that, well, that means you're probably in the top 5, which means you're in the sweepstakes for Marvin Harrison Jr., which is like, that's exactly what this team needs. Get Anthony Richardson, the best wide receiver in college football right now. That's a huge win for the Colts. If you have development from him, if it's a fun, exciting year, the Pacers is the perfect example. And we're talking about a team that's in the mix to get one of the best overall players in college football next year. I would say win-win-win if that's kind of the 3 boxes you check.
Yep. Follow that Pacers blueprint. Call Rick Carlisle. What'd you do? This is follow the same script.
Same script, that's for sure. Let's end this pod on this note, George. There's some reports after the schedule is released. You also have the preseason schedule released as well. Bears, Colts, week number 2 in the preseason. Joint practices, it looks like, for the Bears, which is huge for the development of Anthony Richardson and to get him some experience, because you hear a lot of coaches and say the joint practices are even more useful than the preseason games. That's huge for Anthony Richardson's development to have some joint practices against what's going to be a feisty, young, intense Bears team as Matt Eberflus comes back to town.
Absolutely. I think that's a lot of fun. Reports out of Chicago, as you said, the Bears are expecting to have that. Nothing confirmed yet, but I bet we'll hear something about that in the not too distant future. It's a perfect kind of team to come in because Matt Eberflus obviously knows this roster. He knows the way the Colts practice. Now, it may change under Shane Steichen. We'll see how that goes, but he's got a lot of familiarity with Westfield, with how things run there. I think it'll be fun. And then, for fans, for free, go out get your ticket at Colts.com. You can come watch Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson on the same practice field. Pretty good value. You're not going to top that, I don't think, in central Indiana come August.
Harder. That's a great deal. You're right. It's harder to get a better bang for your buck than a free ticket to watch Anthony Richardson against the Bears defense and Justin Fields against his Colts defense. That's for sure. I want to correct one thing I said, George, before. I said the Colts have 0 preseason games. 0 primetime games. Excuse me. I apologize. I'm wrong about that. Hand up. I was wrong. Week 3, the preseason, 8:00 at the Eagles, Amazon Prime. So I take it back. The Colts are in prime time, Amazon Prime, week 3 of the preseason.
Shane Steichen's return to Philadelphia.
Yes.
That's huge.
Alan Michaels, I'm sure, on the call.
He'll love that. He will love that.
So the Colts are getting the respect they deserve. They will be on the national audience to see them take on the Eagles in the third and final preseason game.
I hadn't seen the times that they finally get. Obviously, the kickoff times are out. Yesterday, I just saw the opponents. I didn't see the kickoffs for those 3 preseason games.
August 12th at the Bills, 1:00. So similar to last year, you start your preseason schedule on the road in Buffalo, home against the Bears, 7:00 the following Saturday. And it looks like, so the 19th and the 24th, that may be a Saturday then, a quick little, or even maybe a Friday night, it looks like. Eagles in Philly, 8:00, Amazon Prime exclusive. So look at it. Amazon wants to see Richardson after all.
Huge game. Yeah, there you go. There's your primetime slate. And the 7:00 game. All I ask for the week 2 game of the Bears, no retirement from any quarterbacks, please. That's it. That's the preseason. Last time the Bears came to Lucas Oil Stadium for the preseason, there was a really high publicized retirement. None of that. But I do wonder, is that why Nick Foles was still on the roster? Were they waiting? Were they going to let him retire during the third quarter against the Bears?
That would have been, I think, fitting. Apropos.
His former team, the Bears, everybody's Nick Foles' former team at this point, but
yes,
those are on that list.
Unfortunately, the Colts did not allow history to repeat itself.
I think that's one bit of history I don't want to relive, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I would agree. That's one day where everyone remembers where they were. I'm sure, especially as they're thinking, okay, last preseason game, last preseason game, let's just mail it in, get out of here, and kind of get that little mini vacation before the season starts. That was blowing up. That was turned upside down as soon as that happened, that's for sure. And I lied that the Eagles game at Amazon Prime, Thursday night, short week for the Colts in the preseason.
Thursday night football.
Saturday to Thursday. There we go. That's the Thursday game we were asking for, George. We got it.
Nick Sirianni versus Shane Steichen. The Philly crowd, I'm sure, will be at a fever pitch for that preseason game. How could they not? They'll be all mad from the Phillies season that they've had. They'll be all riled up. They're ready to go.
They will be absolutely ready to go. That is for sure.
It's just like Game 7 between the Celtics and the Sixers. Same atmosphere.
The Philly crowd, they'll bring the energy. That I think you're 100% right about that, without a doubt. Last thing here we'll say, George, Anthony Richardson, a part of a Roku behind-the-scenes documentary about the NFL draft. Should be a really cool experience. We have no idea what the title is called. We have no idea when it's going to be released. We have no idea even what they're filming, in the sense of, they say it's like a 3-day NFL draft, following the Colts and Anthony Richardson. Will that lead into practices? Will that lead into training camp? Will it just be the 3 days that he got drafted and kind of the shuffling around? We have very few details, but nonetheless, we should get kind of a sneak peek, behind the scenes look at draft day, the process, and seeing Anthony Richardson, the first early days of the Colts, which should be very exciting.
All I know is the day that he came in to the building, the day that he was introduced. So it would have been the Friday of the draft. there were NFL Films people everywhere. It's like Hard Knocks was back. So now I know what they were doing there.
Will we have a George Bremer cameo at all? That's really what I think the people want to see.
You never know. Hard Knocks made some poor decisions, and I was on a couple times. So it just depends on how bad the director is, really.
I think you are really the star of the show. That's what I'm looking for. The press conference room, on the practice field. Where is George? Let's get him in there. Forget Anthony Richardson and all his stuff.
Maybe they'll finally show the 55-yard completion. You know, the big secret, the big throw that he had on day 2 of training camp. The Colts never put that out. Maybe it's being saved for this behind the scenes documentary. Who knows?
Maybe. Colts are trying to temper expectations already. They're smart. They are smart.
They know
George,
what they're.
The schedule is out. We now know the dates and most of the times of when and who the Colts will be playing. An exciting time. Again, the biggest takeaway is this. The record in 2023 does not matter. It could be ugly. Fine. So be it. Progress from Richardson especially is the only thing that should be monitored. And I guess a reason to look forward to the games as well should be another reason to have hope and expectation-wise in 2023. Otherwise, don't allow the record to take up too much real estate in your head. But it's nice to see that the schedule's finally out. We finally have an idea of what this 2023 season will look like. Exciting times are ahead for this team.
And Thursday Night Football in August. Can't beat that.
Cannot beat that. Last year on the podcast, I will never forget it. I called Colts Buccaneers week 3 of the preseason the most important preseason game the Colts have ever played in part because that was the last final dress rehearsal to see what the offense could look like. Because up to that point, it was pretty ugly. And you know what? It was absolutely the right precursor for what the 2022 season would look like. I don't think I'm going to go on a limb here and say that Eagles-Colts preseason game on a Thursday on a short week will be the most preseason, most important preseason game ever. I think I'm going to sit this one out this year.
There's a big question. Maybe we'll get this answer in the comments. Is our former producer going to attend that week 3 preseason game in Philadelphia?
Moshe, Philadelphia resident, Eagles fan. Like I said, the first ever producer of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He absolutely should be there. Why wouldn't he be? Worlds colliding. It's
huge game.
On Amazon Prime Thursday night. Everyone's gonna be watching. George, why? Where would he be elsewhere?
He'll celebrate his Super Bowl offensive coordinator. I mean, it's big day. Will there be a video for Shane Steichen like they do when the players come back? Will there be a highlight video of like his offense?
It has to be. Thanks, Coach. Because also today you just hyped up the crowd by just showing great touchdowns from Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Right. So you get the crowd fired up anyway and give a little welcome back, Shane. Absolutely.
See, that's what we're here. And Gardner Minshew.
That was my next thing because I'm sure he'll either start or play a good majority of that game. Oh, yeah. Will we get a Gardner Minshew thank you and show highlights like the one game he played well against the Cowboys in a loss but had like 35 points.
And now he plays for the Cowboys. It's funny how the things go full circle.
That's good. That is really, really, really good. Again, check out the Titans schedule release video. All of George's jokes, if you haven't seen it while you're listening, will make a lot of sense after you do watch it. So that'll do.
My jokes will ever make a lot of sense, but they'll have context.
Yes, that's context. Absolutely. What a great video. Oh boy, that's a great way. That's a great way to end a Friday too. A nice little pick me up into the weekend. So, we're going to end on a high note right there with a good joke from George. And we'll say, we appreciate you listening to the Blue Horseshoe podcast right here, wherever you do get your podcasts or on YouTube. We will be back on Tuesday. So have a great weekend. Have a happy early Mother's Day as well. Have a great Mother's Day out there. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are listening right now. Have a great weekend. Shower your mom with love and gifts and support. And we'll talk to you on Tuesday on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.